Hey there, my friend. You're listening to the Hot Mess Hotline, and this is Stephanie Krebens. You are totally in the right place if you're an ambitious leader who's charged with delivering on the tech of the future right now. In order to do that, you and your team need to upskill in the process and tackle old problems with new ways of thinking. In the past, we would have called this change management and leadership development, but change is now the air that we breathe, and your team needs a unified strategy for the 21st century. These executive level conversations are nuanced, insightful, and hard-earned lessons that you can put into practice as soon as this episode is over. Remember, small tweaks can have huge impact. So take what's new and useful to you and leave the rest. And I'd be oh so grateful if you get value from this episode that you forward it on to a friend that you think needs to hear this message. My guest today is the one and only Michael Pompey. He is a technology executive with nearly 2 decades of experience driving innovation and transformation. His role in technology actually started when he was a probation officer, and now he is the Chief Information and Transformation Officer for the Girl Scouts of Eastern Pennsylvania, one of the United States' top 10 largest Girl Scouts councils. Not only that, he has numerous certifications from Microsoft, TBM, ITIL, so many more, and is a contributor and thought leader or an advisory board member for Philadelphia Society of Information Management, the CIO Forum Executive Council, and the Black Data Processing Associates. Not only that, he's contributed his insights to so many wonderful publications like CIO Magazine and the Business Intelligence Journal. Let's dig into this conversation where Michael talks about a painful time in his career that my hunch is that you've wrestled with as well at some point or are wrestling with now, and I want to help you get over it. Let's go. All right, Michael, tell me about your hot mess.
So my hot mess is interesting. Just to give you some context regarding my hot mess and the organization that I was working with, I had the privilege, the honor, if you will, to join an organization at its very beginning, its most humblest origins. And the folks that were working there, we were tight. A lot of places like to say they're a family. We legit were like a family, right? We were all getting married at the same time, having kids at the same time, buying houses at the same time. I like to think of us as, if you remember the movie The Breakfast Club during the 80s, right? That tight-knit group at the end. Imagine if they started a nonprofit, and this nonprofit's whole job was to get corporate folks to give money, to align interests, to help kids actually enter the workforce prepared. That was our mission and goal. So I had the opportunity to be with that group. And for me, we were successful beyond anybody's dreams. Folks knew us when we walked into the room. People could tell that you worked for this organization just by the way you engaged, how you're creative, how there was no challenge that was too big for us to accomplish. And we did it. We did the things, right?
I have like goosebumps. I can feel your energy through the camera. I have the goosebumps.
That was the organization that I helped to build and was able to work with and was able to give so many years of my life. All right. So there's the context.
Okay.
The hot mess is when I realized that this organization that I loved so much and gave so much to was either going to kill me or I was going to kill it if I did not leave.
Oh, that like hurts my stomach, my soul, just to hear.
It hurts to even say that out loud, but that was the truth. And it was one of the truths that I didn't share with anybody at my time. My partners on the executive team, my team leads individually, I knew that staying at this place because of the changes that were happening were either going to kill me or I was going to kill it. And it was one of those times where it's like, you know what? I have let myself become a big fish in a pond that was slowly drying up before realizing I didn't have the move to turn around anymore. And that if I didn't flip myself up into a larger body of water, something or someone was going to come by and say, wow, look at this, and just pick me up and take me off with them. So that was the hot mess I found myself in.
And so part of the reason I wanted to cover this topic is because I've been there myself. And very ungracefully recognized it. And I think a lot of leaders find themselves in these shoes. And so I was like, we have to talk about this because this happens in our careers and it's painful. And there are things you don't realize until you've already gotten yourself out. And the metaphor that we're working with here, I'm envisioning you literally running out of water to breathe in. Like it feels suffocating. And I want to start here with these questions from your perspective. Sure. What did it feel like to be Michael, who was outgrowing his place? I mean, we're talking the death of your soul here. Like, what did it feel like in those moments? What were you saying to yourself? What were you hearing inside of your head that were indications that something was no longer right for you?
Right. Well, what's interesting is that a lot of times, and I see this sometimes with technology leaders, you're so used to fixing a problem. You're so used to coming in with the Hail Mary solution, whether it's technology and innovation, a new process, and you're so good at it that you tend to think that when you run into something, you can sort of superhero your way out of it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
In fact, one of my close friends, so my nickname at the office was Black Superman. And I actually have a cape at the back of my chair and a collection of the comic books and the Black Kryptonians and even action figures. And she would often say that, Mike, that superhero high that you have is a dangerous high. You can get addicted to being a superhero. So when I found myself asking these questions and seeing things change around me and just all those little signs of saying, you know what, Mike, something is wrong here, I felt that I could superhero my way out of it. Well, maybe I just need to do more or learn more or do something else.
Yes.
And that it wasn't me recognizing the environment around me. It was me internalizing it. And part of this is ego. I know that now, that I could fix this. And that if I just did better or did more, this would be all right. So when I think back to who I was back then, that's what he was thinking. He was thinking, okay, what's the problem? How are you going to solve this? How are you going to fix it? Not realizing that by trying to do that, I was prolonging not only my pain, but the organization's pain as well.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I have so many questions. I want to drop a pin here. And then when we talk about reflections, when we get there, the curse of more. If I could do more, if I can learn more, if I could find more resources, this is the overachievers curse is we believe more is more. And I bring that up because I have hit in 2024, personally and professionally, I hate more is more. And I've spent 44 years saying more is more and I hate it. And I hope that I finally learned my lesson. And I know we're talking about when you learned your lessons, but
right.
More is not more.
No, it is not. It is not. It is not. And what's interesting sometimes too is technology leaders, we sometimes look at everything that we could possibly do for one side of that equation, right? Whether it's time and your relationships and family and compartmentalizing things. Yes. But sometimes we fail to see that the other side of that equation is infinite. You are never going to match it. Never. And that's one of the things that, this ordeal that we're just starting to peel the layers off describing started teaching me that lesson when I had to go through this.
What else were you feeling in those months and weeks leading up to knowing that you had to leave?
So what's interesting is that, we started the episode, right, me mentioning that I journal a lot. And so in preparation for this, I was like, well, let me go back to the journals that I was writing during this time. And there's some pretty scary things in there. For instance, my wife told me one time, Michael, when you're asleep, you're sleeping like this, with my head in my hands, face down in the pillow.
Oh,
that I was internalizing so much of the stress that my organization was going through at the time that, it was affecting me physically, mentally, emotionally. Started getting the usual suspects, right? The acid reflux, gaining weight, not enjoying any of your hobbies and different things of that nature. Yes. But all of those things just went by, right? I gave myself the usual delusion that it's just going to be temporary, and then I'll come back to these things once we get through this rough patch. So
Yes.
at the time, as I was going through these things, I didn't even recognize how bad things were getting. It wouldn't be until after I left that friends walked up to me and said, "Oh my goodness, you look so much better." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Don't I, didn't I put on this mask the right way? Didn't I
Uh-huh.
hide all of this stuff from you?"
Uh-huh.
They're like, "No, I could tell. I could tell something was eating you up alive. I'm glad whatever it was that you did, you took care of because now you look different."
Wow. So you were suffocating yourself in your sleep. You were gaining weight.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I was doing all of these things. When I think back of just how much we tend to internalize because we think we can control it all, it was beyond not healthy. And again, with maturity and with retrospect, I can see a lot of ego being in that as well.
Of course, of course. And I'm of the opinion, ego is not all bad. I think if we know how to leverage our ego, we can actually do some really amazing things with it. It's when it lies to us for too long and too much and tells us to control versus allows you. I do believe we can use our egos to shine and to have courage when we need to. It's not
Mhm.
all bad, but when it tells us that we have to control everything, when it tells us we always have to be perfect, we always have to put on the mask, that's when it's overused. What did it feel like to have that mask on for you? Like how did you know you were using a mask versus using Michael?
So one of the things that, folks know about me, whether it's a good thing or not, I usually kind of describe myself saying, I'm about as subtle as a brick through your windshield. Right? there's not a lot of subtlety with me. You kind of, what you see is what you get.
I love it.
Um,
Yes.
and so, as my organization it was changing around me, right? You're seeing the steady drip of people leaving, right? The institutional knowledge, the different things that are going on. I realized that I was wearing a mask when I had to sit on an interview for a replacement for a team lead that I was responsible for. And inside, as I was talking to them, I wanted to scream, "Get out," like that movie, right? As they were sitting here. Yes, my job is to find talent for the organization and bring them in. But at the same time, I wanted to scream, "Run!" Because, I really just could not have them join the organization.
Yeah, you knew better.
It felt wrong. And so I just could
Oh,
not do that. So that's when I knew. I was like, you know what, Mike, this is a mask. I can't do this.
I feel those pains of those days. One time, I had an EA, God love her. She was like the voice of the Holy Spirit to me sometimes. And there are two things that I quote her on often. And one is anytime I was emailing her at 10 o'clock at night the next day, she would respond to me and go, "Shouldn't you have delegated this to me so you didn't have to work at 10 o'clock at night?" I'm like, "Oh, you got me." And I've told that story a million times on this podcast because it's just like the beams of truth. But the other thing that she said to me, because I said to her probably 6 weeks in a row, "JC, if I can just get through the next 2 weeks, then everything will be okay. If I can just get through the next 2 weeks, everything will be okay." And she's like, "Stephanie, you've said that for months straight now. Like,
Yeah,
when is it going to stop?" I was like, "Oh,
right. It never stops. It never
never,
stops. Yeah.
never."
Yeah. And I think Marshall Goldsmith describes that too, that a lot of leaders have this delusion that it's just a set period of time. And then once I get through it, everything will be better. But, that dream I had been doing for 10 years, right? The same thing over and over again. It was just this one time or just this one crisis or just this one issue, but it just never would stop.
Never. What were the actions that you took to get yourself out of that situation and get yourself into the place that you needed to be in that next season of life?
There were a couple of things. One, was having, a conversation, right, with my wife, with my friends, with my coach, just about, hey, what am I facing? Because during all of these challenges, right, while, the organization is constricting, right, you've got a change in public policy, which is affecting money, people are
Mm-hmm.
leaving. My friend and CEO at the time told me that she was leaving the organization. And in my mind, I'm thinking, wait a minute, you run this place. you're leaving?
Is that an option?
And then at the same time, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, people are going to want me to stay to take over.
Mm.
I was like, that was sort of my, hero's journey refusal of the call, if you will, to know that, hey, this is not where I need to be. I need to just be really, really clear on just what it is I'm looking for and how to go. And one of the things that my coach said to me at the time, which really rung home, he basically said something to the effect of, Michael, you need to be in a place where you're celebrated, not tolerated. And when I thought about that, I was thinking, wait a minute, I am kind of tolerated. I haven't been celebrated in a while. I haven't even allowed myself to celebrate some of my accomplishments in a while. And so that was one of the things I said, okay, you know what? Take an assessment and let's start taking a look at just what the next environment needs to look like for you.
That's the mic drop of the moment. Are we in a place where we are celebrated, not tolerated?
Correct.
So what was that assessment like? I'm assuming you walked through it with your coach. Like, walk us through like some of those self-discovery moments. What were those hard-hitting questions that you had to ask yourself so that you could find your next place?
The hardest questions that I had to ask and answer was, which part of this had I created, either directly or inadvertently.
Yes.
I think sometimes we can get, used to what's familiar and what's comfortable, whether it's a bad job, a bad relationship, a car you put too much money into, and what's familiar is the thing that you want to stay around. And I had allowed myself to get really familiar with the ins and outs of my organization. I've pretty much probably done every single role except for CFO in it. And it's like, okay, so where have I let myself down, and having to own that. And then once going through that piece, then asking some sort of, again, having a coach is great because they can sort of hold you accountable and give you this sort of external perspective. But part of it was just defining, well, hey, what is it that you want? What is it that you bring to the table? And where is the next place that you need to be? And that was a different set of questions, because normally you're like, okay, you do the usual suspects. Well, let me freshen up my resume. Let me hit the network event. Let me shotgun this place to see who's, and it really was like, no. Let's take a step back from that. What is it that you want? What's the value that you bring? Mm-hmm. And sometimes those are scary questions to ask yourself, right? But then once I did, and once I had that answer, I could see myself in a different light. I could see opportunities that, I'd allowed my own internal thermostat, if you will, hide from view because for whatever reason, they didn't match my own idea of what it was I could accomplish and go after. But once we had done some of that work, I could really start taking a look around me. I'm like, you know what? No, this is not for me. This has been served its purpose. It's time for me to move to someplace else. And I could be selective about what things I would entertain versus not. And it didn't feel bad. It felt like a process of discovery and exploration. And so that's some of the steps that kind of led me to start moving to the new direction.
I'm thinking of this concept of, radical personal ownership, and folks who are willing to ask and answer the question, what role did I play in creating this situation, are often, I find, the people willing to take radical personal responsibility, because, that is such a brave question to ask and answer for yourself. What do you know now about owning your career, owning what you want out of your life, that you've come to learn since this experience?
One of the things that I've come to learn since this experience really is, what does it, at least for me, right? What does it mean to actually have that growth mindset? A lot of folks talk about growth mindset, but when you think about just what growth really feels like, it's uncomfortable, right? You doubt yourself. I don't know enough. What am I doing? Is this a mistake? And things like that. And a lot of times those are so uncomfortable, people will tend to shy away from it. And for me, understanding that, hey, I want to get from here to there, there's a whole piece I need to learn and find out, and accepting that, it is going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to challenge my viewpoint. It's going to make me doubt myself, but knowing that those are the pieces that make me better on the other side of that, and accepting that was something that I had shied away from before. So I wanted to stay in my areas of expertise. I wanted to stay in the places where I knew I could hit a home run every single time at bat.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the places that, going through this process helped teach me that, this is the skill set and the muscle that you need to develop now in this next phase of your journey. And so that was one of the biggest takeaways of going through all of this.
Oh my gosh. And I just think about the connection to, because what I hear in your journey is a pattern of overachieving, and overachieving has this striving to it, this more is more kind of mentality that eventually brings us to our knees. And we have to admit, no, I just want to grow. I don't want to burn out all of the time. Michael, what I hear in your story is, and check me on this if you disagree, your striving before was related to more is more. I can do more. I can make this better. I can create better results. And through this journey, you came to admit to yourself, no, actually, I want to have a growth mindset. I'm willing to be uncomfortable. I'm really willing to try new things. I'm willing to sit in the insecurity. How do you see high achieving and the growth mindset differently now than maybe you would have perceived it back then through that experience?
There's that old saying about, what got you here won't get you there.
That's right. Yes.
And
Marshall Goldsmith, one of my
there we go.
boyfriends, the executive coach of executive coaches. Yes.
There we go.
He doesn't know me at all, but I adore that man. No,
He doesn't know you yet. Yet. That's the growth mindset. Yet.
Yes, I like it. Yes.
So for me, just, I guess, one, realizing that, there are different seasons as it relates to a person, and trying to, stay in this one area all the time doesn't do me any good, doesn't do an organization good. In order for me to really be the leader that I can be, right, I have to embrace the new, let go of the familiar. I've got to be a force multiplier. I've got to get my teams to move with me. That is a different set of skill sets. You can't code your way through that. I can't look at a line of code and look at all the, the tuning that I've done on these databases and these clusters to prove that. No, it's something different now. And accepting that is one of the biggest pieces that came from this journey. And also, the other piece that I got from this too, there was a fear, not so much of failure, but that people would attribute if the organization went under because of me. Right. And having to let go of that idea that, oh, well, people are going to say this organization tanked because I was the last one, at the helm, or things like that, versus me realizing that, hey, me staying when I'm not operating the way that I need to be might exacerbate that in and of itself. So this was another piece that I took from this.
Oh my gosh. That pressure that we put on ourselves is unbelievable and completely unrealistic. And my hunch is that it probably wasn't until you saw that in your journal where you were like, I'm putting the whole organization's success on my shoulder. Like, check yourself, Michael. Like, no offense, but you're not that important.
Well, and that's the thing about the superhero high, because you're so used to rushing in and saving the day all of the time that, again, that was my nickname. And so you kind of internalize that when you realize, what, maybe you need to kind of be more like Batman on this one and let folks kind of, do for themselves with this versus trying to be, Superman all the time.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So we get to choose which superhero we get to be.
Listen, that's exactly right. That is exactly right.
I love it. I have another friend, client, colleague whose superhero of choice is Iron Man, that comes out in certain situations, because Iron Man has a strength and a drive and a determination that others don't, but he also knows when to put it away.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, no, that's the key right there, knowing when to put it away.
I love it. Oh my God. Never thought about superheroes high. Yes. Ooh, I'm also thinking of my husband. So he helped run COVID response for our state during the heart of the pandemic. So from 2020 to 2022, basically. And he worked a lot, but through that, he earned the nickname, the Mr. Incredible. And there are pieces of his story that I hear reflected in yours during the pandemic as well. And
I mean, the pandemic was such a time because it also showed me. So I don't know how they did it in Indiana, but here in Philly, they took the convention center, right? And IT workers, we were like second in line. Healthcare workers were first.
Yeah.
And when I went down there, you see the National Guard and the Humvees and the QR codes and the scanners, and I'm seeing the enterprise, wireless access points, the databases, the screening, and whatever. And I could see the large systems, and it reminded me, Mike, you got into technology to help systems help people. Not to sit behind spreadsheets, not negotiate contracts, not to do procurements. You are supposed to be moving systems. What are you doing? And that's when I got the first knockings of that. Hey, you know what? Something may be misaligned here, but it wouldn't be until the organization started, slowly, drying up around me that I would see that, hey, you've let yourself get into a situation.
Oh, I love that. I love how the universe brings us the ways to show us our calling, to light us back up, to remember what joy feels like, and say, do that. Mike, do more of that.
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
So looking forward in your leadership journey, what do you want to take about the lessons that you've learned since then about who you are as a human, who you are as a spouse, who you are as a leader, to continue to build those systems and I almost said save the world, but that's a little too loaded for this conversation.
Right, exactly.
But do that big picture systems work that is impactful. What do you want to take with you into the future?
Listen, there were some, great things that, I learned, working with, my previous organization and is where I was able to sort of hone my mission as related to helping nonprofits raise their expectation of excellence. And what, and how I describe that for people is sometimes when a person is working for a mission-based organization or a nonprofit, they might sometimes adopt the mentality that, okay, well, I'm delivering this service or this good. It's okay for it not to be like the for-profit people because it's for a good cause, right? Or for a mission. And my windmill that I've always tilted at is no, of anything, we should have the best things that we deploy because it is for people, because it is for children. And so and working with organizations saying, hey, you know what, not only are we going to do this well, right, but we're going to change the expectation of what well is. There's no more reason why you should expect to do it second class. So for me, it is about using the same systems that Amazon does, the same processes that UPS does to deliver the same kinds of services and outcomes for people. So that I've taken with me, and what that means and the learnings that that's going to push me and the uncomfortability that will allow me to experience. But knowing that at the end of the day, that is the mission that I drive for through all of this, is again, to help raise the expectation of excellence for those organizations that have a mission-based focus. That is who I am. They deserve to have someone like me, and that's what I bring.
Oh, yes. I want more of that in the world, Mike. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
Fabulous. All right. I just remembered our friend Rob Field had a special request for your podcast episode to ask you a certain question.
Oh, Mr. Rob Field, of course.
Of course. He wanted to make sure that we covered this together.
Okay.
And it's a riff on what I just asked you, but a little bit more present based. What have you learned from that experience that has been instrumental in who you are now?
You know what? The biggest piece from all of that experience that's been just crucial to understand who I am now is that we're bigger than our idea of us. And that a lot of times we will paint a comfortable picture. And I had done that. And my successes and my awards and my accolades, and while all of those are good, I can see now that I could have done so much more, but I allowed myself to paint a comfortable picture. So I am comfortable taking a brush to a new place where I am uncertain, where things feel unfamiliar, knowing that I've got the experience to paint another beautiful picture. It doesn't have to be the same thing. That's one of the biggest pieces I've learned from this.
There's nothing to follow that up with, except I wish the whole world gets to learn these lessons through you too. So thank you so much, Mike. Thank you. You've made my day.
Excellent. Thank you for the opportunity to share this story, Stephanie. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. My friend, talking with Michael and feeling that pain that he was feeling as he was outgrowing his organization. I want to know, have you ever been there? I know I certainly have in my career, and there have been times that I have not handled it so gracefully, and I've sought to learn and grow from it. I hope that this conversation will help you do the same. The next time you feel like you're bumping up the limits of your role, of your organization, you have a better example from Michael about how to move through it, what questions to ask yourself. And I want to go back to that powerful question that he was willing to ask and answer for himself that I do believe was a pivotal moment in getting him to his next level. And that question was, how have I contributed to where I am now? What have I tolerated? Where have I created these problems for myself? Answer those questions for yourself, and you will truly be able to look yourself in the mirror with clarity to say, here's how I've created this. Now, what can I do next? What can I create for myself? What can I do to advance in the way that makes sense and honor my gifts and my strengths and my experience in a new place or in a new way for this existing organization? In order to get what you want out of your life and career, you first must be able to admit to yourself what you want out of your life and career, and then go ask for it. That's the secret to all of this, my friend. All right. Again, if you got value from this episode, I'd be oh so grateful if you would share this with someone that you sense is maybe struggling with this as well, or